All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. It's Kate Stillman with yogahealer.com. And this is part of our launch series on Ayurveda for our Living Ayurveda course. And today I have Sarita co-hosting with me. And our topic today is on trauma, your healing journey, chronic pain, illness, and inflammation. I'm curious in the chat if you guys can type in, if I know many wellness pros are here. Actually, I would say historically half the people in our Living Ayurveda course are wellness professionals already. We tend to attract a lot of wellness professionals. So if you're here more on the pro side, let me know in the chat. And if you're here more on the personal healing journey side, let us know in the chat too. And that helps us orient the conversation more to meet your needs. I'm just going to give a quick little like you are here map of where we are in this series. So we started with Alex and I, these are our Living Ayurveda course mentors who helped me in guiding the journey of the Living Ayurveda course. Our next round of this is starting in October, but a lot of people will start in Body Thrive before Living Ayurveda, which starts in September, which is why we're doing this now. So Alex and I talked about constitution, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and introduced some of the body type concepts. We'll keep building on what we've talked about in the past as we go through these. The next class was last week where Linda and I talked about, and mostly I hogged the mic. I'll try to be a little more generous today on rewilding and revitalizing your diet with Ayurveda. We talked a lot about, or I talked a lot about the microbiome. I talked a little bit about urine therapy, and we talked about plants and thistle and a little bit about invasive weeds and the plants that are the permaculture plants on the planet today. And part of what you discover with Ayurveda is that there's a lot, like it touches every aspect of life. So we could have chosen master classes on all sorts of things, from intergenerational relationships to women's health issues to parenting, et cetera. And that's sort of the nature of Ayurveda, is it touches every aspect of life. We chose these 4 classes and these 4 topics, which you all have access to all of them, even if you missed one, so that you can start to experience more of the Ayurvedic operating system. That's how I see it. It's an operating system that's really super helpful for understanding your human physiology, for understanding your body, your life, and thriving for you. So today we're in trauma. We're going to cover today wellness journey, chronic pain, inflammation, disease, healing work. Pray for us. This is a lot to cover in an hour. Roots of healing with chronic symptoms, walking the healing journey, digesting trauma, why Ayurveda sees trauma as as something that needs to be digested more than removed. A bit about designing journeys, designing your wellness journeys, how to make changes when you're in a rut, and the importance of strengthening immunity, resilience, and the mindset, and really the mindset training from Ayurveda. And then next week, Robert and I are talking about what happens, on the other side of the healing journey, what happens on the other side of owning your constitution, of rewilding your habits. What happens is the next up leveling of dharma, of your life purpose, to live a life of the greatest meaning, and how this is a natural evolution and how it weaves its way through your relationships and your spiritual growth. So that's what's coming next. For those who don't know me, I seem to create relevant curriculums and grow communities. Don't know why, but that's what I'm here to do. And I've been doing this for 20 years, and it just keeps growing. The community around Yoga Healer and Yoga Health Coaching, I'd say, is stronger than ever. It's more potent and impactful than ever. And it's just a super cool thing for me to say I get to steer the ship for. All right. So Living Ayurveda course, it's a 1-year course. It's super effective. I've been leading it since 2007. If you want to come with us, go to yogahealer.com, living-ayurveda-course, and I'll put this chat, or Sarita, if you can put that link in the chat, that would be awesome.
Okay.
All right. So this is the deal. This is really what we find is that, like, say you're at A and you have trauma and there's health issues, right? There's health issues that go with trauma. And we'll get a bit into that today. There's choices, right? There's choices to make to transform. And part of the method, and you saw it in these bullet points up here is there's a lot around journey, right? Like I have the word journey. And what I want to talk a little bit about today is the nature of a healing journey. And part of the nature of the healing journey is being with other people on healing journeys and other people who have healed, who have really deeply healed. And being in a community like that is what we have found at Yoga Healer very much deeply supports the process. Part of what's going on in modern day culture is there's information overload and there's a million things that work, but we really end up entrenched in our own habits. So if we're in our habits and it feels like life is on top of us, rather than us on top of life, it's hard to make those changes outside of a healing community. And I can't emphasize this enough because it took me a long time to realize that. It took me a long time because I was working with clients one-on-one. And it wasn't nearly as effective as when I started guiding journeys and bringing people into right relationship with each other and into the experience of going somewhere together. So it's like, it looks more like this. And if you're on the outside, it's hard to even tell what's happening on the inside of a really supported, guided, transformational healing journey. So I wanted to bring that up from the beginning, just to set a bit of a context of why we see healing happens better with courses, with curriculums, with a group, with a process that's proven over time, rather than one-on-one practitioner type relationships. I'm not saying there's not a need for those. All I'm saying is that can be a piece of the puzzle. To me, the bigger piece is this. And I'll unpack a little bit about why, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. So the idea is that it's easier to get from the issues that arise with trauma to feeling good in an organized way, on an organized path, than kind of piecemealing a path together on one's own. So today, and this is going to be a bit of, Sarita and I we didn't really go over what we were going to talk about. So I just told her to bring herself and stories. And I'm just going to start with a little bit of an overview. And I'm just going to talk for maybe about 15 minutes on a concept in Ayurveda. We talked about it last week. We talked about the prana and tejas and ojas. And I wanted to ground the conversation a little bit more in this today. So in the very first talk on constitutions, we talked about Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And how Vata is the force that moves things, Pitta is the force that transforms through heat, and Kapha is the force that coagulates. And in that, it nourishes, it brings things together in a moisture-rich environment and creates nourishment. And what I want to talk about with trauma and chronic pain and chronic injury is what's happening on the subtle level. So it doesn't matter what constitution you are, as far as if you're going to experience, trauma. Like trauma in all cases it starts to vitiate or upset the natural flows of energy in the body. And that's Vata. So I want to show, I'm going to get a little bit in a minute. I'm going to go to my pad and just show how does prana, and I'm going to add another word here just to make it easier for you guys. Vata becomes prana. And that's how energy moves in the body. And we're going to look at that with trauma and chronic pain and chronic illness. And because all of those things are where energy is not moving the way it's supposed to move in the body. And I'm going to draw these out so you can see them a little bit more succinctly, but we're going to focus particularly on this one in the middle, on what's going up as above, so below. And what happens particularly with the prana apana relationship. So the energy, is it rooted going down? That's apana. If it is, then we can be inspired and uplifted. That's the parachute of prana. And we're going to look at that in terms of trauma and pain and illness. We're going to also talk again about pitta and tejas. So tejas is the power of discrimination. And it's really this discrimination to a target. So often with chronic pain and trauma and illness, it becomes very hard to make good choices. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is so. And we'll talk about the relationship, because these three things, prana and tejas and ojas, are in relationship. You've seen the word ojas before in this series, because I talked about it in particularly last week and saying that, hey, ojas, which we call the immune system, the adaptive immune system, ojas is the subtle energy of kapha. And kapha right, is that which heals. It's that which brings the energies together. And prana and tejas and ojas, when they're in right relationship, you heal. And when they're not, you don't heal. And that follows a pattern. And so if we can kind of just kind of get into a bit of that today, and this is part of the reason the Living Ayurveda course is a year, is it's big, it's a lot to learn, and it's a lot to understand. And for many of us, it's a foreign language and it's a different operating system. But I know many of you have bits and pieces of these words and these understandings and these concepts. And so if anything, so we start to lay the foundation and tie them together, my hope is that you really understand your own physiology better. All right. I was listening to this morning, I was kind of brushing up on my where does the microbiome meet trauma in research? I don't know if any of you have done research on microbiome and trauma, but it's exactly what you would think it is, which is basically trauma instantly affects the microbiome. And we're saying the microbiome is the adaptive immune system. And some of the research that's been done recently is on acute trauma. Like if someone has, if you fall off your bike, acute trauma, right? You fall off your bike, acute trauma, it immediately affects your microbiome. It's really fascinating. So immediately your immune resilience decreases. So if you're looking at long-term chronic trauma, you're looking at a microbiome that's under chronic stress, right? Which means that your adaptability and your resilience are gonna go down. So I'm just going to give us some of the images here. Then I'm going to go to the pad and we're going to start tying some of these things together. So I'm going really fast, but just stick with me. This is an image that I'm just trying to show that there's levels of the energetic body and the physical body and the self. So in Ayurveda, we call this koshas. And kosha, it means a sheath. It's like if you put a knife in a scabbard or a sheath, that's the meaning of kosha in Sanskrit, K-O-S-H-A, K-O-S-H-A. So you have the bliss body, the intuitive body, the mind body, the energy body, and the food body. You have these layers of the self. So what happens when trauma, it's like this gets indented. And I'm going to draw this out as well and start to tie a bunch of this stuff together. But I just want you to have like a visual of like, there's all of these bodies. And when trauma hits, and often traumas start as something that's acute. Something happens. And it could have happened when you were in utero. And guess what happens to the baby's microbiome in utero? It's affected. So if the mom's under stress, if the mom's drinking alcohol, if the mom's hearing loud sounds, if the mom's being physically abused, all of these things are going to affect the adaptive immune system of the child. And so then we'll see more PTSD type symptoms in the child. We'll see more issues with how the mind and body are organizing the self.
Hey, Kate, can I drop a trauma bomb?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So one time I asked one of my teachers, like what happens when somebody's an addict and like they kind of get frozen in a certain age, like in their, a young age, have you ever heard that?
You mean
like
in terms of like developmental, human development, maturity?
Yep. And I was like, is it a Vata issue? Is it a flow of energy? Is it a transformation? Like, what is it? And he basically said, it's none of those. Basically, trauma goes beyond like the doshas, and it basically inflicts a wound like right at the light of the soul. And like basically, it's not something therefore that you can address really with like through the doshas. And this was the mind blower. He said, the only way you can really heal trauma, there's two ways. One is for the two souls to come together and forgive, which opens the heart. And the second way explains why people like you and I, or anybody who hasn't had some trauma, but why we're all here, is that the second way that trauma is healed is by helping other people that have had similar issues. And that's the depth of the real true healing of trauma, which is like completely explains why this process in Yoga Healer is like so powerful, because unbeknownst probably to a lot of us, we're like diligently healing trauma all the time. You know, this is what we're doing. We're healing our own, we're healing each other, we're coming together. And it's really on a soul level that the essence of all of our healing is really happening. So that's my trauma bomb for today, is that.
Oh, I love it. Well, and it explains too why so many people and, you know, so many healers, you know, process their healing journey. They attract people that are similar to them. So many people who go through living Ayurveda course on a personal healing journey, then go into yoga health coaching, right? And help others. And and it also explains that part about ancestral, important. But why what?
And why their story, telling your story is so important, because it magnetizes others who have the same issue. And then that mutual healing is occurring on a very, very deep soul level, which then allows you you're like moving from the inside out, you know, and then you're doing all the rest of the work with the more gross elements and the levels of being. But that's the essence of yoga healer, honestly. And so, you know, it's a very powerful approach that we all have here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And also,
I'll just draw this out too. So if we look at I was going to say personal development, but this is really human development. And many of you have seen me draw this in the past. This comes from like spiral dynamics and integral theories, where we see each level of development, and you go this way, but each level will transcend and include the previous level. And so what we're saying here is sometimes what happens is the trauma is so strong, say a trauma comes in at a certain age, is it blocks the growth. So now you have, and we see this all the time, right? Where it's like someone is not continuing to have a future that's bigger and brighter than their past. With each evolution, if we'd say this is one evolution, that we would say this is an identity evolution, where the personality develops, the habits develop and evolve, the cognitive thinking capacity develops and evolves. It's really cool how they actually map it out in aqua theory, is they go all quadrants, all levels, and you can actually map like step by step. Oh, like, yeah, the personality changed, the cognitive development changed, the intersocial relationships changed and evolved. And so we have these identity evolutions that happen at each stage of the game naturally, but these only happen, and this kind of goes back to what we find is that you have to be in a growth community for this to happen. Long-term chronic trauma, if you will, is where you get locked in at a certain level of development. So if someone's telling you like, oh, well, you can't do that because you're going to need insurance, or you're never going to make enough money doing that, or you're going to, well, you can't lose the 30 pounds, or pain's part of aging. And, you know, like this is the kind of stuff, like those are trauma. Those are just constant traumas that's not a growth community. That's not going to foster an identity evolution. And if the microbiome is trying to teach us anything, right, it's that like, it's all ecosystem, it's all interconnected relationship. Interconnected relationship arises via communication. Human beings do that verbally. We do that through body language, et cetera. So if we're not with people that are growing, it's hard to keep growing. If you're not in good soil, the plant dies. Okay. So if we look at this, if we just tilt this on its side, this is one of the ways I draw the patterns of growth, is that we have growth, and this is what we see above the ground line. What we see below the ground line is depth. And what I often find is that when there's trauma, and it can be, but I was at a ceremony and with some people that were processing a lot of trauma not too long ago. And it's to me, one of the most fascinating things I think with trauma and chronic pain is how like someone can look so normal from the outside, healthy even from the outside. And then you find out what's stored in the tissue, what's being stored in the memory. And it shakes you to your core to hear the stories, right? It's you never would have imagined that this person that looks like they're actually doing all right. They're doing all right, like what they're carrying on the inside, right? And so if I look at this, and first of all, if that's you, I just want to say, like, I'm sorry. Like, I really am. Like, I just, like, it's how humans have treated each other is just, it's insane. And so if you're here for healing, I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to do work. It can get better. It can get a lot better. This is where healing happens. Healing is it's in the depth journey. And it's not sexy, and it's not fun, and it's not like, you don't get little stars for it. It often won't increase your bank account. Like, it's not as flashy and showy as the growth journey. But at some point, growth can't happen without the healing journey, without depth journey. You'll end up hitting glass ceilings in your life again and again and again, and it'll feel like you're trapped. And usually what happens is the accumulation of the trauma or the accumulation of the pain creates a wall. And so you can't grow. And usually what happens at that point is there's regression, and regression might show up in terms of addiction. And addiction, I use the term addiction really loosely. Like, addiction to me is like doing something repetitively that's bad for you. It's just as simple as that. And it doesn't matter if it's buying too much shit you don't need, or if it's eating too many sweets, or if it's snacking all day, or if it's hanging out with people that are putting you down or not helping you grow, or if it's actually, drug, alcohol, pharmaceutical related, right? We all have an idea of what it is that's not working for us. If we're doing that repetitively and we can't stop, I'm saying that's addiction. That will cause regression every time, which means that in terms of the human development side over here, we're not going to have an identity evolution. We're going to have an identity regression, where we're less capable of growth. Now, what that is signifying to me as a healer is that there's work in here. There's some things in here that have not been digested or integrated. And I know when I was saying like healing's not sexy and it's not fun, I'm just trying to be honest. It doesn't mean it's not the best, deepest, most meaningful work of your life. It doesn't mean it's not the most rewarding work of your life. It is. It is all that. It's so unconscious in our culture. It's so not paid attention to. It's not built into our economic model, which is entirely built on outer scale growth, even while we're killing the planet, right? That's a depth journey. Humans coming into contact with like, oh, wait, our actions are not sustainable. That's now in a depth journey. There's healing to be done. Whenever the bank accounts aren't adding up, we're going into a depth journey. And I mean that on every level of accounting, not just like the bank account. So the pain and the trauma need to be processed. They need to be digested. And in this, there's a incorporation. It's a really interesting word, incorporation. The word corporeal. Has anyone heard like I don't know, who came up with the body keeps the score? Some wonderful person said that. Or someone who understood, right? The body keeps the score. So there's the corporeal nature. The corpus is the body. So we drew before the 5 bodies where we said, okay, there's a food body, and there's an energy body, and there's a mind body, and there's an intuitive body, and there's a bliss body. And what Sarita was saying was that like the trauma itself is going to penetrate all of them. It's going to go through the midline of the center of the being. It's going to happen on the soul level. And when this happens, when there's that level of disconnect, it creates, this is one of the ways that I heard it described it by one of my amazing teachers a long time ago, was like, it creates this shatteredness. It disconnects the interconnectivity of all those bodies. So that means there's not an easy flow from the soul through the action of the physical body, or there's not an easy flow from intuition through the thoughts in the mind, through taking action with words and hands and movement, right? That there's levels of disconnect that the traumas happen. So when we go to a place of digestion, what we're doing is we're digesting those little shatters, those little breaks that are blocking a subtle level of connection and communication in the physiology. And usually there's big ahas. Sometimes memories are processed and memories are rewritten. Usually that's is what happens. I'm curious, Sarita, because you talked, I mean, we do ancestral healing in Living Ayurveda course. You have a background in that, and in this processing and reconstructing of memory. What are you finding and how that helps digest trauma?
Oh my God, it's like, because I think ancestral healing is so based in forgiveness, and it's just one of the elements that heals trauma. You know, there's what we're doing now, we're helping other people, which is the other strategy, but forgiveness is the big one. So I think ancestral healing is just all about forgiveness, and repair. It's like forgiveness is repair, because when you're holding against someone else, it's separation. And if it's about a heart healing, there can't be holding a separation on that deep level. So that's what I find is yeah. And someone just said self-forgiveness, it's all one, when you're forgiving someone else, you're forgiving yourself, you forgive someone else. But there's that quality, of understanding who you really are beyond likes and dislikes that happens in ancestral healing, which is more expansive. That's the bliss body. That's the heart, the light of the soul. And so that's what ancestral healing is really all about, is getting there, because that's what the ancestors in the realm, the beyond realm, really, if there was a one, it's not a one like we know it, but the one is for all of us to continue to clarify and continue to transform and, enlighten. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And it's like a healing backward too, is what it's stuff is sometimes, if we haven't done it, it's hard to experience it or explain it, or not to experience it, but it's hard to explain it, but it's a healing backward that then heals forward in the cycle of life. It's like you get a much bigger picture and a much deeper connection into the root of the root cause.
And then you realize like there is no backward or forward, because it's all just happening, and we're all, it's
yeah, exactly.
It's a continuum. Then you're like, it's a continuum. Then you're back to the biome, you're back to the gut, you're back to
and you're in quantum biology at that point.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about the doshas and Vata, Pitta, Kapha, and then we'll go back and forth between these things. So we talked in the beginning, we talked about how we have Vata, Pitta, and Kapha as constitutions, but how they're also these forces. And for people that have more, everyone has all three doshas, everyone has all five elements. So Vata is air and ether, and Vata constitutions tend to be longer or shorter. They tend to be lighter in general, more ectomorphic. Pitta types tend to be more mesomorphic, more intense, more fiery. They deal more with infection and inflammation, whereas Vatas deal more with nervous system issues. Pittas deal more with, more like they have more intensity, and they tend to deal with more inflammation. I don't even want to use the word inflammation now because it's so out of context with modern culture, but we'll just say, more infection type issues. Kaphas are more endomorphic, and they deal with more issues of stagnation in general. And so this is out of balance. When we have trauma, if we look at these as energetic, so Vata is the force that moves things. It's the force of movement, and it's the force of rhythm. Pitta is the force, and again, Vata becomes prana on the subtle level. Pitta becomes tejas on the subtle level, and this is the power of discrimination. So part of the force of Pitta, what it's in charge of really is transformation. So when we were talking about growth identities, growth relationships, and all that, Pitta is driving that. And that's through when discrimination is good and right and strong and powerful. Kapha is in charge of really, in many ways, of like the ongoing resilience of the organism. And it does that through the adaptive immune system, which is Ojas, which is the microbiome. And now I'm putting all of those in one category. So what happens with trauma, we should probably go back to the slide of how prana moves. We'll do a new one here. I'm going to draw, this is you in a very simplified form. So the way that Vata moves is there's 5 directions, and these are called the Vayus or the pranas. Those 2 words are used interchangeably. And there's your root and there's your crown. And when we're talking about directional energy, it has to start somewhere and it has to end somewhere, right? Just by definition of coming and going. So prana is happening. Let me do this in a color. Prana, we'll say this is the area of prana. In the root area, this is the energy of apana. And I showed you this really quickly in the slides, and I said I'd then explain it. What happens with trauma in general, chronic pain included, acute pain included, chronic trauma, acute trauma, all that, I'm putting that all in a category. I'm making mass generalizations. And I'm saying with that word, the big T word, with trauma, what happens to the root? What do you think? Does it get more grounded or less grounded? With trauma, do people get more grounded, more steady? No, it goes up. It goes up. And so what can happen is that the energetic, this is an energetic, energy's going down. I'm going to draw this with really clearly, like energy is meant to go down and it's meant to go up. And when it does, there's another cool word in Ayurveda and yoga. It's more from yoga, actually. This is called spanda, and it means pulsation. So the pulsation, this sets rhythm. Music needs a rhythm, right? Otherwise it's cacophony. But like music has a rhythm. The day and night has a rhythm. The seasons have a rhythm. The breath has a rhythm. The heartbeat has a rhythm. When you're in rhythm, you have a shot at health. When you're out of rhythm, you don't. So Vata, and this is important to understand. This is why, like, those who study Ayurveda is like, why is Vata in charge of like most imbalances? Why do most people today have a Vata imbalance? Why? Because the rhythm is off. So Vata, this controls rhythm. Vata controls for spanda, for rhythm. So you have trauma happen, and all of a sudden, and the rhythm is dependent. Does everyone get that the rhythm has everything to do with polarity? There's sound and there's silence. Silence, sound, silence, sound, silence, sound. There's opposites, right? Opposites on the spectrum. The way those show up in the body, the way that we give articulation to this is that there's polarity. There's the crown and the root. The most basic rhythm is the energy flowing and contracting and expanding between the crown and the root. That's the balance of prana and apana. You with me? Someone nod. Someone be like, yeah, we get it. We're there. Okay, great. So trauma happens. All of a sudden the root gets blocked. And it can happen in different places for different people. Some people get blocked really high, like up at the heart. Other people, it might just be second chakra, but the floor is no longer down here. It's no longer down here. It gets up, 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 up. Now that's an energetic, I'll just lock it there for now. Now what that means is that the energy coming in is going to get bounced in, bounced. So what's going to happen down here? Let's start with microbiome. What's going to happen to the microbiome? Happy, unhappy? Unhappy. Now, the interesting thing is I was listening to this microbiome and trauma today, and they said the most diverse genome of the microbiome is where? That's right. It's in the colon. So and this is why, like in Ayurveda, we're like, get an enema. Why? We want to drop the flow. We want to drop apana vayu back down. We want you rooted. We want you in your root. And the easiest way to do that is to put a nourishing substance in the colon. I highly recommend urine these days, and it'll pull down. Why urine? What does urine do for the microbiome? That's the next question you should ask. Oh, it nourishes the microbiome. What does it do to pathogens? It kills it. Okay, 2 for 1. Great. And it's free. And it's always available. Always. Like, try to go a day without making urine. See how that goes. So all you do is you put it back in and it drops the apana vayu down. And we're seeing this a lot in our community with urine therapy. People that have had a lot of trauma, that are ungrounded, chronic trauma, generations of trauma, right? It heals. Why? It's diversifying the microbiome. It's dropping apana vayu. It's killing pathogens. It's all free. You're doing, and it's a reminder of you putting yourself back into you, which is crazy, you guys. Like, I'll keep saying it till the cows come home, but like, I did not think 20 years of Ayurvedic study, hardcore, I'm a very intense person, would land me telling you to put your pee in your butt, really. But that's where we're at. Yeah, no joke, Soko. Okay, so what happens, what happens is this becomes normal. This uplifted where apana is getting to, it becomes normal. We have now in Ayurveda, we'd say, well, we have an imbalance of Vata. Well, an imbalance of Vata is really fascinating because all these prana, tejas, and ojas, if you're going to actually have an identity evolution, if you're going to keep growing in healing, prana and tejas and ojas need to rise in right relationship to each other. They get stronger together. You get more energy. That's Vata. You get more power of discrimination, which is like, I know where the goal is. I'm going there. That's tejas. That's the subtle dosha of pitta, right? And it guides transformation. Like, for those of you who are like, I should get in the Living Ayurveda course because I want to grow. Yes, if you do that, we can help guide your transformation. That's a solid container to do that. Doing the same thing that doesn't work, that means tejas is low. Poor tejas means you can't make good decisions. Can't make good investments with your time, with your energy, with your resources, with your attention. When prana goes low, tejas in general goes low. And what I mean by that is if this cycle, if the spanda, by going low, it means that this, you see my thing, that isn't as big a pulsation as this. So it's a lower vibrational pulsation. It's a smaller vibration, and that affects the ability to make good decisions. Why? Because now you don't have access to the intelligence of your colon, for one, and the rootedness in that microbiome, which is going to affect your brain. And that's the gut-brain connection. When that happens, when Vata goes low and tejas goes low, ojas also goes low. The diversity of the microbiome goes low. And now you're going to have more susceptibility to chronic issues. We see a direct relationship between trauma and autoimmune issues. That's the relationship with kapha, controlling for microbiome. You guys with me? Kind of? Sort of making sense? I'm trying to bring some of these words together because I know you're hearing words like microbiome in common culture. And I know you're hearing words like Vata imbalance in the world of Ayurveda. And I want to start to tie these two things together. And you're hearing a lot about trauma lately too, like trauma's all over the news. Good, good. We're culturally starting to process trauma. Fantastic. That's good. Now, the stronger our microbiome is, if we boost ojas, right, by strengthening our microbiome, we're going to have better decision making. That's tejas. And that'll give us access to more energy. So these things are always in relationship to each other. Go ahead, Sarita. Anything come to mind, or any questions coming up?
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay.
Keep rolling.
Okay. I know it's kind of I know these words, it's kind of a lot. So what I find is in this category of the depth journey and healing, and I want to talk about this, is it's slow. So the energy, these are some images that I've drawn before. See how I have hell down here? So that's hell. Growth is heaven. And we want to focus on, the good stuff all the time. We want to focus on on that. But really, has anyone read, do we have any Jungian psychologists in here, or people who dabble? Jung said, Carl Jung, who is a depth, he was like the first real depth psychologist. His teacher was Nietzsche. We're now in Western philosophy and psychology. Jung said, no tree can grow to heaven whose roots don't reach to hell. Right? So that's a clear understanding that if you don't process the trauma, if you don't change what's happening in the corporeal nature, if you don't release the stored memory, if you don't heal with the ancestors, like if you don't go through those steps of that, you won't experience the kind of identity evolution, the kind of shift and growth that you're meant to be able to do, that you're here to do. And so water and earth, if we look at the speed of the elements, the growth journey is all about air and fire. It's the journey that happens in the light. It's towards the sun. The depth journey, the healing journey, is the journey that goes to the core of the earth. It goes to the center, and it goes through water. It's in our mythology. It's in the mythology and the ancient mythology of Ishtar and Inanna and Ereshkigal, if you want to go way back. That myth transforms in Greek mythology to ones you might be more familiar with the journey of Demeter and Persephone. Remember Persephone and Demeter? Just quick review on Greek mythology. Demeter's up here. She's the queen of air and fire. She's the queen of the harvest. She makes the crops grow. She's up in heaven. Like she's got a chair with the gods. Like she's all that and more. Everybody loves Demeter. Gorgeous. She has a daughter. There's this weird deal that's made. And Hades, who lives where? Hell. He is the king of hell. Ereshkigal also marries the king of hell. Previous myth. You have to go back a few thousand more years before the Greek myths to hit that myth. In any party, this is part of human psychology. This is part of the human stories. This is part of how our brains formed, is on these stories. It doesn't matter which culture you get. You're going to find a queen who's married to a king and they live in hell. Right? Now, what are they there to teach us? It's not that nice down there. Like, first of all, it's like, there's no flowers in hell. Anyone who's into like vampire myths, it's like sort of the same thing. Like the flowers die. There's no color in hell. It's under the water. It's murky. It's confusing by nature. It's disorienting. It's swirling and whirling and vortexing. And it pulls you down and it pulls you in. But that's the root. That's the root. And so when we learn not to discriminate, whether we just are addicted to a growth path that's not rooted in a depth path. And a lot of us culturally have that pattern where we don't want to do the deep, deep work. We don't want to go to hell and back and live to tell the tale. Until we do, until we realize there's no way up but down. And that was Jung's realization, is that you've got to go down to go up. You have to root to rise. Anyone who's watched professional athletes, particularly, let's talk about the NBA and basketball. If you watch those guys jump high, what do? What do they do before they jump high? They bend their knees and they stick their butt out. They're getting energy into the root. They're dropping upon a vayu. They're rooting down to rise up. It's how nature works. It's how the spanda works. You've got to go down to go up. Now, the one thing I wanted to add to this is that this is slow. So in Ayurveda, we talk about the opposites a lot. And we'll talk about how water has a slow energy. Air has a fast energy. It's like if you watch the Olympics and you watch the runners, how far they can run, how fast they can run 800 meters. How fast can they swim 800 meters? What's faster? The running. By what factor? Like, I don't know. I'd actually be interested. I'm going to guess it's like a 4-to-1 factor. It's pretty high. So water work, healing work is slow, and that can be really frustrating. So if you're here and you're listening and you're like, I've already done all this healing work. I'm so tired of the healing work. It's important to realize that you've had a gain, that like where you started isn't where you are now, and that gain has a corresponding growth. And you might not be where you wanted, but you're also not where you started. Yes.
So another way to look at it in yogic language, when we're talking about like the first chakra and the, the apana vayu and the downward flow prana, is that the only way to open the first chakra, the major way, is you have to say yes to your dharma. Like you have to embrace your life wholeheartedly and say yes. So yes, when you say yes and you embrace it and you're not like, no, 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 I'm too small, I can't do it, I'm not strong enough, I'm not smart enough, it keeps you up out of that. But when you take chances and you're like, and could you kind of feel the impulse to move forward? But then you can go, no, 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 no. And that keeps you up. But when you go, yes, when you say yes to your dharma, every time you do that, it moves you deeper down, it roots you deeper.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that is what lets you go up. You can't go any further up until you keep saying yes to the growth. That's the, it's the power of choice as a human being. We have that power. We get to choose it. We don't just get a dharma and it actually just, we just do it. It's like we have to choose it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And that's, when the first lesson, it's interesting when we reconstructed the Living Ayurveda course, because I've been teaching it since 2007. And so when you do something again and again and again and again, you learn something hopefully along the way. And so we have to have had a few times to like restructure the course based on incorporating what we've learned. And the first lesson is the healing space. Like you need a space to heal. Everybody does. And when you don't have a space to heal and then you have a trauma, you're fucked, because that's not the time. That's not the time to create a space to heal. And it's not a time to create the healing practices. And we see this with Body Thrive. So the Body Thrive is a course that runs in the background for all other major courses. It's included in all the other things that we do. So Living Ayurveda course members go into Body Thrive, and that's where we get people grounded in the circadian rhythm habits. Why? Because they're going to ground the person's apana vayu. They're going to increase prana, tejas, and ojas, and the person's going to start to thrive and be capable of greater things. And this is one of the number one measures of success that I see in Body Thrive members, is that then when the shit hits the fan, and it will, like, we don't get to choose what happens to our loved ones. Like, we don't get to choose what happens in the world and when pandemic happen or things shut down or blah, 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 right? Like, we don't get to choose. It's are you set up so that when something happens that was unexpected, that you're interpreting as a negative, that you can reincorporate, you can reorganize your physiology back into pulsation. When this happens and apana gets lifted up, and this can happen, again, accidents, injuries, deaths, illnesses, all these things will start to lift apana vayu up. But the habits do is they bring it back down. And Sarita's point of like, you're making a choice. Like the earlier you make the choices on the path to go deeper into healing, and you can choose to go deeper and deeper, even though this work is slow. And I just want to say, like, a little finally pat on the back for this for myself, is I've learned to really embrace the slowness of healing.
Yeah.
Coupled with, and to me, this is really important, coupled with the iterative actions that create the healing. So when I'm in a healing mode, right, I'm in my healing space 5 times a day. I just keep going back, just doing the little things again. And I'm imprinting like these are that which slows me down into the pace that the healing's taking place. This is what helps me make better decisions. Because if I'm in my healing space, I will be digesting into reality. I'll be digesting the past trauma into reality. Then I'll eat better. I'll be way more protective of my attention. So I won't let other people like take me down or out or whatnot. I'll like find what I need to watch, what I need to listen to, what I need to learn. I'll spend more time in silence. I'll adjust to the slow pace in which healing happens. And in that, what's so fascinating, that's where hell becomes heaven. Ereshkigal and Persephone are both happy to be in hell. It's the wildest transformation, because they're not at first, but then they learn the magic and the mysteries, and then they're grounded there. They're grounded and they can see in the darkness. And that's the nature of healing. Now, when that happens, this other really super fascinating thing, and this is like, I've seen this enough in myself and in other people. What's fascinating is you get bounced into growth really fast. And that's where you have the breakthroughs. I'm just going to show one more slide on the master views. I always get mad because I start writing on my slides and I can go back and erase them. Is what happens is the obstacles and growth, and this is the part that's part of the healing, is when we incorporate that, there's a breakdown, there's next level competencies. This is where we're actually doing the healing work. And then there's a breakthrough. And so that corresponds with the breakdowns part of the healing journey. The breakthrough is what we see above the surface. That's the growth other people see. And they're like, oh my gosh, you look so great. You look like you lost like 50 pounds and all the trauma's gone. Like you're so much lighter in your spirit. And that's what they see of you. And they're like, where were you when I was, like, where were you when I was in hell? And they didn't see that part. Other people don't really see that part unless they're the people you're really intimate with. They don't see that part. We just see each other's growth. What's important to realize is people that have growth that are very incorporated, they're very in their body. They've gone through these journeys, that they have tales to tell. They've rewritten memories. They've processed trauma and digested it.
So Kate, when we go to our healing spaces,
Yeah.
we're digesting aversion, really, like getting out of that mode of aversion to whatever the heck is going on and getting back to saying yes, like, okay, I'll deal with the pandemic. I'm going to deal with what's going on without, bitching and moaning and being averted to everything and becoming so negative, and right?
Yeah.
You just get
really
even
agree.
again. You get even again.
And this aversion is, in many ways, we're digesting, like in Ayurveda, we're saying we're digesting the doshas here. And so if we look at the different flavors of doshas, right? So like Vata out of balance, and this is what I was trying to show here, is like, because Vata goes out of balance, remember this is all Vata, and this is imbalance. And if we go back here, this is happening in the nervous system. Oh my gosh, in this microbiome and trauma, the lecture I was listening to earlier today, it was like total reductionist science. It wasn't that interesting. I'd share it with you, but I don't think you guys would find it that interesting, but I'll try to put it in the show notes. They're really talking about this like direct link. It's really crazy. Like a lot of the drugs that people are on for anxiety and depression, guess what they do to the microbiome? They destroy it.
Yeah.
And it's so hard, right? Because someone's in a pattern where they're already at the place of asking for medication, and then the medication decreases their body's ability to develop resilience. And within resilience, this is very much, and we were going to talk about mindset, is it happens from the inside out. It happens from the health of the organism. It starts to reprogram the mindset. It's not a mind over matter at all. It's a matter over mind. So in the matter of the physiology and the matter of the microbiome is healthy, when we're a healthy integrated ecosystem unto ourselves, the lungs are expanding and contracting. They're in pulsation, right? The digestive system is expanding and contracting. We're having complete bowel movements. We're allowing for hunger. We're eating and becoming satiated. That's in direct pulsation. And these pulsations around sleeping, where it's tired, we go to sleep, we sleep deeply, we wake up, we're awake and alive, that our hormones or our neurotransmitters are in this direct pulsation. All of that creates a sense of like, I can do it. Like I can conquer the world. And I choose to do more, to Sarita's point. I choose to step into more responsibility. I choose to step into more leadership. I choose to create a life of even greater meaning, right? And that's a natural state of mind. That is a reflection of internal resilience. It's a reflection of what's happening at the health of Ojas, which I'm saying is parallel to the microbiome. So if you're in a place where you are depressed or you're anxious or you have low level chronic anxiety, et cetera, what you're going to want to do, right, is nourish your microbiome. You're going to want to spend time in your healing space. You're going to want to start to do your enemas. And you're more than anything though, that I'm going to say, it's like you want to be in a community of people who really can understand the nature of the depth journey and the growth journey and be with you in all these little micro stages, all these little stages, like day by day, so that you can keep going down into the root of what needs to be processed to enable your next level of growth. Because one of the things that I see the most in modern society is a sense of like, oh, it'll be all right. And these really like these platitudes, these quick fixes, like put on your happy face and don't show me your pain. Like, I don't want to go to hell with you and back. So if you are not in a community that can handle hell and back, it's harder to get into the root of healing. And that's really what I just wanted to explain. Like this, you guys, this doesn't like, I signed up for this work, right? This is where this work has led me. And that's all I'm sharing is from the experience of this. And the kind of deep digestion that I see in on a healing journey with a guide and a healing group is it's so powerful. It's so cool to see people that come in with 3 autoimmune disorders go into like deep, deep, deep healing and get to a place of resilience where their prana is strong, their energy is strong, they're rooted and they're expansive. Their tejas is strong. They're able to see like, that's my next goal. And they're able to move consistently towards that goal. That's tejas. And where their ojas is strong, where they're able to handle more of the ups and downs that are part of everyday life. Yeah. I'm just going to go back to my slides for a second, and then we'll go to any kind of Q&A. I think we kind of did talk a lot about a lot of these things. First of all, disease and healing,
we
root of
did.
healing, right?
Yeah, totally.
Immunity, health problems. Yeah. Okay. So just a quick review. Tejas is your specific goal. Prana moves in these different directions. If you look at the one in the middle, that you have to be rooted to rise. When trauma happens, those two things get compressed. And so in the process of the habits that we teach in Body Thrive, in the process of grounding and expanding, these two become more separate, and you get more dynamicism within the polarity. Microbiomes everywhere. The microbiomes are different in different parts of the body, meaning there's a different genetic, there's a different genome or different genetic intelligence, different bacteria and viruses, and other things as well that make up the microbiome that are in these different areas of the tissue. The colon seems to be the most important, right? Which brings us right back to the Ayurvedic theory of Apana Vayu. If you have to be rooted in order to rise, you have to go to hell, you got to go down, you've got to be stable in your own self. That's all root chakra, right? Before you get to rise and really contribute to community. Like that's how dynamic balance seems to happen. When trauma hits, it hits at all levels. And when healing happens, it's healing all the different levels back into interconnected communication. P is important. Enemas are the key. P enemas, you can do it with a saline kit, costs $2 at the store, dump out the saline, put your P in, squirt it up your butt. If you don't have regular bowel movements, you can do it. It'll help you have regular bowel movements. If you do have regular bowel movements, you can do it after your regular bowel movement. It's kind of weird at first because it's going to detoxify. It's going to pull out the stuff that shouldn't be in your colon, and it's going to nurture the stuff that should be in your colon. And that can feel weird and different at first, but then it becomes just part of like the normal things that you can do with your pee. One little last tip. Everyone take a deep breath in. Now sigh as you exhale. Sigh, let all the tension out. Quickest way to reset your nervous system. Sigh. It's like your body's naturally doing it. Start noticing yourself sighing and start exaggerating sighing. One of the fastest ways to drop Apana Vayu down. I have found many times, like after plane rides or after I do a lot of sports, they're pretty high adrenaline. So I'll do things and I sometimes crash on my bike, or I go through Whitewater Rapids on a paddleboard and it's like a little traumatic, and I'll just sigh and sigh and sigh and sigh until I feel the Apana Vayu drop. I was like, I'm grounded again. Now I can proceed. Anyone who's been like pissed off while you're driving, or like something almost happened while you're driving, you're like, sigh, get that energy out of your body. It's just stagnant and it's causing Apana Vayu to get uprooted. So now it's in your belly button. Get it back down. Get it back down into your perineum. All right. Yeah, and talk to us if you're interested in working with us. Like, our courses are amazing. Our course members are the best. I am so happy. I'm so happy with us and who we are. If you want to join us, join us. We're really quite welcoming and quite cool to hang out with. And that's it. We're at Q&A. Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks, Sarita.
Sure, that was fun. It's like a little marathon.
I know, right? Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm really finding like where, there's a lot of Ayurveda. Like, when I started teaching the Living Ayurveda course in 2007, I think we were the only online Ayurveda course back then. There's like one guy who was like shipping DVDs out. Remember, those were like the early days of online courses where you'd like buy a pack. But like, Ayurveda is a living conversation. It happens, like growth and healing is also living conversations. They aren't meant to happen in a bubble in isolation. It's like we grow through community and through connection. And one of the things I've seen over time, because I think our Living Ayurveda course has the highest member return rate. So people that have been there for a while, and it's like, there's these levels of depth on that healing journey, like new levels of depth and next levels of depth. And it's like the level that of integration that we're possible, that is our human potential. And then what that enables, like how that then shows up and how we show up in the outer world and what we're possible, what's capable, like what Sarita was saying in terms of like what you can then say yes to. And these bigger yeses that don't feel overwhelming at all. They feel like invitations from the cosmos. Like that to me is where Ayurveda really goes. So it's like the healing isn't an end in itself. Just like the habits and body thrive. We don't do the habits to do the habits. We do the habits to live a bigger dharma, to have a life of greater meaning. And it's just the backbone of it. Healing work is for every human, right? It's not and you can tell people that do the bypass and they don't heal. And then you get that like stuckness of identity evolution, and you get regression, and you get stuckness in beliefs, stuckness in conversations. Yeah.
Connection heals trauma. Isolation's a trauma response.
Yeah. Isolation's a trauma response. Yeah.
That's why reach out, don't tweak out is one of your principles.
Yeah. Okay, there's some questions on urine I see in the thing. So, and you can also raise your hands, you guys. You can just use the raise hand function that's somewhere in the Zoom on the bottom, and we can talk directly. Questions about enemas. How often do I do enemas? I do a 20 milliliter urine enema of aged urine daily. Now, I talked to this woman. The podcast will be out in about a month. Her name's Leah Hansen. No, I got to look up her last name. I can't remember. That was another person. And she is getting her PhD in urine therapy. This will be like the first PhD in urine therapy that we know of, which is totally nuts.
What, a PhD in urine therapy?
Yeah, but like, why is it the
Wow.
first one, right? And anyways, she's doing a study with, and it's wild. The study is really cool. It's she's taking people's blood. Darlene Tehan, urine therapy, urine enemas, and research with Darlene Tehan. It's going to come out. Oh, my team says it's coming out on the 16th. Great. And what she's doing, her research is really kind of wild. So she's looking at like live blood samples under microscope in real time. And these people are aging their urine. It's just, I can't remember how long they're aging their urine for. I think it's like 10 days. And then they're injecting these 10 or 20 milliliters, which is not a lot, you guys. It's like a shot or 2 shots into the butthole. And what she's finding is like how much of, she's just seeing under the microscope, how it breaks up stagnations, how it eats free radicals, how it eats bad bacteria. It has a direct impact on the blood. So I have, as everybody has, your own genetic background. My particular genetic background mutates, has a very, very high likelihood of mutating to colon cancer. Very high. I have an 80% chance of having colon cancer. It's pretty high. So like me and my colon, we're tight, So for me to do a urine enema every day, first of all, it feels great. My digestion's amazing. My sleep's amazing. My mood's amazing. Like everything works a little better on the daily urine enema. And it takes me literally honestly, if you were to time, I'll time it. I'll time it tomorrow. I'm guessing start to finish is under 30 seconds. I do it standing up. It's like the fastest. I would do a video, but that's really TMI. It's really fast. It's not a big deal. And oh my gosh, it's like when you notice the effect in your mood and digestion and sleep, it's pretty easy to do it. So off gassing, there's like a 4-day period after you pee where it releases a ton of ammonia. So what's happening is your ammonia is like an in-between factor in urine. So your body takes nitrogen, it takes ammonia, it packs it into uric acid and urea, and then you pee it out. As soon as you pee it out, the uric acid and the urea, as far as I can tell, start to off gas the ammonia, and that starts to nourish the microbiome within the urine itself, because urine itself is its own living food, just like sauerkraut's a living food. So it develops and becomes more complex over time. Sauerkraut over time will rot, but other ferments won't, like miso paste, like they have miso paste that's years and years and years and years old. Yeah, same thing with with other fermented substances. Elsa, you want the pea enema video? I don't think I could go there, Elsa. I appreciate your enthusiasm. Yeah, so the off-gassing and why. Most people just do the off-gassing part because I think as it just keeps developing, right? The actual probiotic nature of the urine keeps developing. And so then you're getting the most bang for your buck, even though it's free. You're getting the most for your time investment. And more like the aged urine, the people that are like heavy users in aged urine, they are always going for the most aged. Like they're really big on the oldest pee you've got. Yeah. If you take medication for bladder incontinence, should you use your pee for the enema? I would go on to, I would Google or do a search on Facebook for urine therapy and communities. And I would ask that question. This is the problem with urine therapy. Doctors don't know about it or don't do it or advise against it. So at this point, you're at something that's called citizen data. And citizen data is used in pretty fringe communities, like citizen data and like microdosing LSD. There's an enormous amount of citizen data on that. It's really well organized. I'm finding the same thing to be true. And reasons people microdose LSD are like all over, like all these different issues. Like it's amazing with weight loss. It's amazing with chronic inflammation, et cetera. But like most people don't hear about it because that research was banned for 50 years. Now it's back. So yay on that. Urine therapy research, there was decent data even 50 years ago in terms of like doctors reporting of what was going on, but like it's just been dead for a while, kind of like LSD research and all the psychedelic research was dead for a long time. Is it coming back? If it is, send it to me. I'm having trouble finding it. I'm finding like bits and pieces here and there together. The citizen data, what citizens are reporting, that's alive and well. And the way you can find that is in user groups of people that are really using a lot of urine therapy. Now, the problem with medication, right, is you're upcycling, and dosage is hard with medication anyways. Anytime you're getting prescribed medication, like they're guessing on dosage. They don't know how that drug's going to affect you, how many side effects there's going to be. Are you going to need to take more of it? Or are you going to take less of it? And so there's like a ballpark estimate, but people will be assigned the same amount. That like someone weighs 100 pounds, someone weighs 250 pounds. Drugs obviously going to affect them really differently. When you're upcycling your pee, doesn't matter where you're putting in, but particularly enemas and oral where you're drinking it, you're going to get more of what your body's putting out. You're going to get more of what is in the blood plasma. In general, people need a lot less dosage because you're getting more bang for your buck. It's much more, it doesn't matter if we're talking supplements or we're talking medications. Dosage should generally decrease with that. Now, I'm not allowed to give you any advice on medication at all. It's not within my scope of practice. So I'm just sharing as someone who's sharing citizen data, what's happening in the community. The loophole is this. Most people in urine therapy, if you read most books on urine therapy, it'll say, don't do this if you're on medication. And then you'll read all these user stories, and the user stories will say, this helped me get off my medication. So then where are you at? Right? You're in that loophole, especially because a lot of people on medication don't want to be on it. They don't like the side effects. They don't want to be tied to a drug, especially in their body. They're trying to recover their own pharmacopoeia within their own physiology. So I would get on those groups and I would ask that same question. And And some people will comment that have also had, I mean, if you're on medication for bladder incontinence, I would do other things for bladder incontinence. So things that I would do, first of all, for bladder incontinence, I would do urine therapy, but I would also like jump on, you know, those little mini trampolines, rebounders, 5 times a day. Remember, with healing, it's the frequency that's going to determine the pace. So like I was saying, like when I'm in a healing phase, like I'm going to go back to my healing space 5 times that day, maybe 10. Maybe I won't even leave it if it's cute, right? I'm going to go deep, fast. And the same thing I would do with urinary incontinence, even if you've had 10 children, right? If like hit the rebounder 10 times a day, what is that going to do? It's going to strengthen the bladder muscle. At first, you're going to pee all over yourself. So don't worry about that. Like that's just part of it. You're just going to pee all over yourself. And you're like, oh, I peed all over myself again. Great. Keep doing it. You'll notice, oh, I peed a little less. Oh, I peed a little less. Oh, oh, wait, I'm not peeing all over myself. Oh, this is amazing. My bladder's strong. Great. Now I don't need the medication. So that I have found so much more effective than pelvic floor exercises, et cetera. And it's easy and it's fun. Like jump for joy, put on your favorite music. And, you know, we're not talking about jumping for long. If you do 30 seconds, you do 20 minutes a day, but you break it up into 10 little segments. Great. I had this client when she was in Living Ayurveda course way back, and I visited her house and she had a rebounder next to her TV. And I was like, you are the smartest person I've ever met. Like, why not? If you're like, instead of sitting down, like jump for joy for a few seconds, then sit down. And it was right there. So anyone walked into her house, it was like right in the center stage of like, this is where life happens in my house. That's where you want your stuff. So for instance, this is part of what we do in Body Thrive is we talk about how do you really wire in smarter habits and what does that look like? And part of that's architecting your environment. So my daughter wanted a pull-up bar for Christmas, just like every 12-year-old girl. And so we put it in the kitchen between the like living area and the kitchen area, which is a big open room, but we hung it right in the middle. So you walk under the pull-up bar 10 times a day if you're at home. What does that make you do? Jump up and swing like a monkey. So you bring the habit into your space. And the more you do that, it becomes part of normal. We're normal, we're monkeys, we're meant to swing on trees, right? So you're just bringing these things back into your life. Am I saying urine microbiome heals or improves the microbiome, Jane? That is exactly what I'm saying. And the fascinating thing about enemas is, this is actually, the microbiome in the colon is largely anaerobic, meaning it doesn't need oxygen to breathe. When you put urine, if you drink urine, the chance of that microbiome actually making it all the way to the colon are not high because it goes through all the gastric juices and the hydrochloric acid and it gets changed along the way. It gets digested and broken down. So whenever you're looking to actually absorb something in its pure state, you go in through the anus and you get faster absorption. It's the same reason that fecal implants, where they're trying to diversify the health of the microbiome, they don't go down the gullet, they go up the butt. Right, so you get instant absorption. Thoughts on restless leg to trauma impacting prana and apana? Yeah, do you want to comment on restless leg at all, Sarita?
Vata, displaced Vata, maybe like going beyond the just accumulation and you know, it's starting to, Vata's moving. So it's affecting your thighs. You know, I would say, you know, you have to talk to somebody a little bit more deeply about what's going on, I think, in that way with the lifestyle and some other things. You said you have some pretty good habits. I was just looking at it and I'd have to know more, like how long and, you know, some other things I'd want to ask you. But yeah, it sounds like maybe you've had a Vata imbalance for a pretty long time.
And now,
Could that be?
can you get your sriracha sauce? Can you get everything outside?
Oh, hold on, we gotta do some muting
Oops.
here. Okay. Yeah, so something like, I mean, often with if we look at restless leg and we look at like the long-term deep-seated Vata imbalances, there can be layers. And this to me is so much part of the healing journey is there's like things are presenting on a surface level. When we mask them, often, things like restless leg will be masked by like a pharmaceutical. We don't get to the root of like what is happening in the downward, at like the deep down grounding energy flow. So when Sarita's talking about that accumulation, aggravation in Vata, it's like there's been enough of, it's hard to understand this out sometimes if we're not that familiar with the language. So Vata can be functional in the body, and that's like the regular flows of energy. It can go dysfunctional in the body, as can Pitta and Kapha. So Pitta dysfunctional creates inflammation. Kapha dysfunctional creates stagnation. Vata dysfunctional creates irregular energy flows. And when you have restless leg, it's like it's an irregular energy flow. It's like there's stuck energy somewhere that's not able to flow. So it's how do we get to the root of what's causing that? Is it on and often people with restless leg, it kicks in right when they're ready to go into deep sleep, right? It'll kick in right when they're ready to relax. And so it's like, what is happening that the nervous system isn't able to find a new root, a new level of floor?
Yeah. Thought is like no longer in its home. It's like traveling out. It's like going. So you have to figure out with help now. It's not as easy as maybe diet or habit. It may need something a little bit stronger to help that process.
Yeah.
It's not a quick answer, I guess is what I'm saying. There's not like one answer. It's not a quick answer.
All right. I think is that all the questions? I don't see any hands up. Good. Great. Again, if anyone wants to come with us on Living Ayurveda course journey, go to yogahealer.com/living-ayurveda-course. You go through an application and then you'll talk to someone on my team and we'll send you all the details and all that. It's a very connected community. You get a lot of access to mentors in real time. And because we know that like so much healing happens through conversation over time and then doing the practices over time. And I just want to wish everyone well, everyone that's had trauma. Again, like, I'm sorry. And I'm so glad you're here. And I'm so glad you're healing. Anyone closing thoughts? You can unmute your mic and we can, and then we can close. Thanks for the comments in the chat, you guys. Okay, cool. Thank you all. And hopefully we'll see you next week on Dharma, life, relationship. See you then.
Thank you
Bye,
so much.
everybody.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.